Good morning. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar or coffee talk. My name is Sean O'Brien. As always, I am pleased to be joined by Steve Huntington. Steve, are your mic and everything ready to go?
Yeah, well, it allowed me to unmute myself, but it's not allowing me to start my video for the first time ever. It says the host has stopped it.
All right, let me see if I can do something about that.
I might log off and log back in and for just really quickly if I have to. I was able to do it in the participants channel, but not on the regular button. Hold on, let me try a different way here. Yeah. Never seen that before. Let me try. Hold on. Give me one more second here. Let me try something.
Sure. Well, while Steve's doing that, just a reminder, thank you for joining us today. Per usual, we will be sending out a link to today's presentation along with a copy of the slides. That will probably be out late Monday afternoon or early Tuesday morning. So look for that. Certainly communicate with us through the Q&A box or the chat feature. We will monitor those throughout the coffee talk today and either take them in the kind of the midst of the conversation, or we'll take those at a convenient pause in between slides. So Steve, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, the video, yeah, it's I don't know if it doesn't have me as a panelist or something, but it won't allow me to start the video for whatever reason. You guys know what I look like. My name is Steve Huntington. I've been working with community financial institutions for my entire career, and I guess about 25 years worth. And I've been spent about half that time now working with Sean at QwickAnalytics.
Great, thank you, Steve. Just a reminder, again, I think with the coffee talks, we feel like have been an effective forum to share information, information or enhancements to the tool, provide hopefully all of you the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have either with the tool or just the guidance itself or calculating your reserve. So, we've continued these and, intend to do so into the future. As we've done for for most of this year, I guess, actually, we do have a few polling questions. Again, I'm a big believer in directions and directional analysis. And so, we've asked these questions, some of which are repetitive, just to, again, kind of build a trend here and just see how things are moving forward this year. So if you'll indulge us, we're just going to start off with a few questions again. This is a familiar question. What continues to concern you over the next 12 months? Liquidity, credit quality, security portfolio valuation, or loan demand? So we'll just give this 30 seconds or so to respond. Okay, we'll go ahead and end this one. Similarly, a little bit of a change, I think, from last month, but liquidity is still by far the primary concern. Loan demands creeped up along with credit quality, and most of us not bothered by where our securities portfolios sit. So thank you for those responses. Next up, loan portfolio concerns. And we should have probably had an answer for none, but what area of your loan portfolio concerns you the most? So CRE, C&I, multifamily, 1 to 4 family, probably not as much for everybody. Ag, I should have removed, and consumer. So, yeah, so this is probably not terribly surprising. Consumer kind of leading the way here. So we'll just give this another 5 or 10 seconds. Go ahead and then that one, and again, pretty overwhelming with consumer. So thanks for answering that. The next one, just on past due loans, have you experienced an increase in your past due loans in the past quarter? Just a simple yes or no response looking here for? Thank you for answering that. 71% yes, 29% no. So again, thank you for participating in that question. Just a couple of left here. Regarding the reserves, did you increase your reserves last quarter? Again, just a simple yes or no. Great. So again, I'll share the results on this one. 75% yes, 25% no. Again, I think as CECL is designed to be forward-looking, I think this is probably indicative or reflective of what I think probably should be happening for most of us. So again, that's really good to see. So and we'll get to the final question here. Regarding your year-end reserves, do you anticipate further increases or increasing your reserve levels before year-end? And so again, yes or no, and this will wrap up our polling questions. Steve, I was thinking I could probably make you host for a second. Maybe you'd be able to try to do that. You want me to try that?
Yeah. Why don't we try that? I mean, I got my hair cut for this and everything,
So let me see if I make you the host for a second.
Because when I look at the participants, it shows me as a panelist, but then it doesn't give me any other options. All right, let me see here now.
Yes, see if we can do that.
Hey,
there you go.
Here I am.
All right, so give it back to me so I can finish the polling questions if you don't mind, and then.
All right. Only question is how I do that.
So just go to the participants and the three dots next to my name. Just make me host again.
Make host.
So I can reclaim it. There you go.
Oh, there we go.
All right. So
look at that.
There we go. So that this was good. 87% say yes to increasing reserves before year end, 13% no. So let me just share those results real quick. So again, thank you all for participating. We'll share these in the email that we send out early next week. Okay. Let me get rid of all this stuff on my screen. All right, so as we go forward, just a reminder, this slide's really here more as a placeholder. We've tried to be thoughtful about improvements to the tool. I know we've made a number of changes over the past few quarters. This just kind of summarizes some of those. Reminder is I would touch on a few of these. That they're all optional. None of them are required to run the tool, so you can ignore them if you don't need them. But again, we're just trying to be responsive to questions or requests we do get from you, our users, with some of additional flexibility. Steve, anything you want to add here?
Well, the only one that is completely brand new is additional notes functionality, and that came directly from feedback we've gotten on some of the previous coffee talks, and we appreciate all that, as well as one-off conversations we've had with users that wanted to add some additional functionality for making notes on their held to maturity securities pools, if they had any of those that required a reserve, as well as probably much more likely is the individually assessed loans. So the same note functionality you have on your loan portfolio and your Q factors and your unfunded commitments, you now also have a column where you can add notes for your individually assessed loans and explanations of why they're in there, and if the valuations changed, and have it save right along with your scenario and be exported into PDF or Excel or however you like to manage the tool. So just a little incremental enhancement there.
Yeah, we'll show a slide on that real quick. I just wanted to leave this up here for a second just to remind you again that many of these updates and enhancements that we've made are just optional, right? They're improvements that we believe overall improve the tool, but again, are not required to be used to continue to conduct your analysis. So
yeah, if we feel like something needs to be done, I mean, if you see another column there, it's never, oh, that's now something that I have to do. That's never the answer, right? It's If there's something we feel like everybody has to do that they didn't have to do before because we've gotten feedback from regulators or auditors that something additional analysis is going to be required for most institutions, we'll have a specific explicit conversation about that before that happens.
Yep.
So any new columns, fields, rows, tabs that you don't need or don't like, you don't have to use it. You don't have to export it. It doesn't have to be part of your analysis.
Yeah, so I just wanted to remind everyone of that. So here's the one Steve was just discussing on the individually assessed loans. This is probably a little bit long overdue. We have notes throughout the tool, but for for the the individually assessed loans and the HTMs, we didn't have that initially. So now you do have that. Steve, again, anything here to add?
Nope.
Okay. So
if
you'll
it's
notice
not relatively self-explanatory, I've done something wrong.
Again, there's some flexibility on the look back. Again, not required to be used, but we do know that for some of you, you may want to evaluate loss histories over a longer period than your warm. So this just gives you some flexibility. Steve, I'll let you speak more to this.
Right, or shorter. I know we've mentioned this over the last 2 or 3 at least coffee talks. But just wanted to, for those of you who hadn't seen this before or understood this additional flexibility, as I would call it, we typically match and mirror the look back periods to the warms. It makes for easy, straightforward analysis and simpler math. However, there's lots of situations where you might have a short warm, but you want to be taking into account a much longer swath of history. Then you need some additional math, right? If you have a 1-year warm, but you want to use 10 years of historical data to get it, we're not adding up 10 years worth of losses because that would be a 10-year loss rate. And when you need a 1-year loss rate. So, or vice versa, right? You have a long warm, but you don't think data from a decade ago is relevant to what your expectations are going forward. So you could use the last 5 years of data to calculate a 10-year loss rate. And then you just need to do some additional math. So all that's built into the tool. By default, if you don't change anything, they'll still be linked together as they always have been in the past. So you don't have to do anything additional if you don't want to, but now you can treat them separately if you'd like to.
Fantastic. Thank you, Steve. All right. So just some industry trends. So again, we've been trying to, as best we can, monitor and compile information that, hopefully is informative and additive to you. So Steve put together the next slide here just on some trends that we've seen. So Steve, I'll let you talk through this.
Yeah, and this is something where we're going to go into the Excel environment in just a little bit here today. This is something that I use what we call we have an add-in tool and that lives in the Excel environment that we have for that we're going to start offering to our credit union users, and we're going to kind of show you how that works. But this was created using that, and this is just here to show, just kind of remind us what happened at when CECL started taking effect at the beginning of this year, as far as reserve levels are concerned. So I just used NCUA Peer Group 5 as my guinea pig for today. So it's all the credit unions between $100 and $500 million in total assets, and that's actually it's about 1,000 of them. It's not 101, it's 1,101 hidden rows there. So there's a lot of credit unions in that peer group. It's the largest peer group, I believe. And so you can see median reserve levels as we kind of switched from the old ALLL. So in the fourth quarter there, median reserves were 50 basis points. And it jumped up to 62 basis points in the first quarter, and then up 2 more basis points to 64 basis points. So median reserve levels for all the $100 to $500 million credit unions in the country jumped about 12 basis points as mostly as a result of CECL implementation, and have trickled up a tiny bit more in the second quarter. But I don't love just looking at medians. I'm the math guy, so I like to look at the 10th percentile and the 25th and the 75th and the 90th. So we put them all in there so you can see kind of at the higher reserve levels what was happening. For people that had 90th percentile reserve levels and saw a big jump in the first quarter from 115 to 1.33%, they actually backed down, just a basis point. But they may have overshot slightly in the first quarter, and now they're kind of settling in on a slightly lower value. So just wanted to share some industry data as to what happened in the second quarter around the country for for that size peer group. But this, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, again, as we've talked a lot on these coffee talks before, being directionally accurate, I think is important. Again, one of the fundamental components of the ACL or CECL that was different from the ALLL was being proactive in addressing reserve levels prior to charge-offs occurring, right? That's really fundamentally one of the things they were trying to change. And so I think this is emblematic of the fact that most of you are doing that, right? That we may not have seen a specific level or increase in charge-offs yet, but we're preparing for trends that might show higher past dues, as we saw in the survey, and now we're reflecting that in higher reserve levels. So I think, again, this is what FASB was really after with the change in the reserve. So I think it's heartening to see that that's actually kind of occurring here as we kind of have an economic backdrop that feels like we're going to approach some level of risk in our credit portfolios. Not clear how much or how pervasive, but this does indicate that we are preparing for maybe higher levels of past dues and charge-offs than we've experienced.
Well, it's about that time horizon, right? It's
Yeah.
and that was the purpose of CECL, was thinking of losses on a cyclical basis, right? We've been in an extended period of very healthy asset quality. And so you would expect that, well, if we're thinking short term, our reserves are going to be about as low as they could be, because our losses have been about as low as they've ever been. But thinking more cyclically with some, especially more recently, economic changes that are starting to brew or have been brewing for some time or expected to in the near future, we're taking that more into account now than we would have with the ALLL. Hence 50 to 62 basis points. It's only 12 basis points, but that's 20%. I mean, it's percent from a percent to percent. So it's 20%. So that's significant. And that's now mostly in the rearview mirror until we see significant shifts in the economy in one way, one direction or the other.
Yeah, I agree. All right, so next slide up. As we get closer, next month, obvious quarter end. I think one area that we've started to see in our own analyses and certainly conversations with users is the feeling that perhaps warm values or levels are climbing, which isn't completely surprising, right? Borrowers may be asking for longer amortizations or stretching those, but we did want to just kind of refresh on some of the flexibility that we've built into our warm calculators, and so Steve's going to kind of talk you through those again today.
Yeah, so on that, so this is just a screenshot from the Excel-based tool. The Warm Estimator tool is a Excel-based tool. We had until last October or so, or until the end of last year, we only had just what we consider our simple Warm Estimator tool. And then after we got additional guidance from the NCUA, if you remember last October, November is when the NCUA put out a significant amount of additional detail about their expectations around warm calculations and assumptions, things like prepayment rates, things like amortizations, and what you could or couldn't take into account with warm calculations that are appropriate for CECL for credit unions. And so we took all that additional very helpful, honestly, guidance from the NCUA and put that into an enhanced version of our Warm Estimator tool, which is a little bit more, a little bit more complex because it gives you more options, right? We started with our Warm Estimator tool being very conservative in nature until we got more details that we thought that the NCUA was suggesting that you could be more aggressive if you wanted to be, and that would be appropriate depending upon your situation. And so we show you kind of along the way how you can look at different levels of conservatism versus aggressiveness in your warm calculations, whether you just use a completely raw, unadjusted warm calculation, which is going to provide the longest warm and probably a higher reserve, all things being equal, because it doesn't take into account prepayments or amortization or anything. Then once you take prepayment assumptions into account, if you choose to do so, Most institutions do, but not all. You see the warm levels drop. Makes sense. And then once you take into account amortization assumptions as well, those warm levels drop even further. But we've seen institutions, depending upon size and complexity and history, anywhere along this spectrum of warm values, as long as it's a conversation that you're comfortable having and can defend your choice of calculations with your examiners and auditors, then you can be anywhere on this spectrum that you think is appropriate. But we provide kind of a different steps and levels to show you how you would do a calculation if you wanted to increase a prepayment assumption, or if you wanted to take into account amortization and get those warm values down to a lower level. And then, like I said, typically a lower reserve level too, if your loans just have a shorter average remaining life. John?
Yeah, great. That's really helpful, Steve. And again, just a reminder, right? I mean, we're trying to, accommodate whatever your culture is at the credit union regarding the reserve, right? Some of you may want as much in the reserve as possible. Most of you, though, may want the least amount. And so this just gives you flexibility to kind of match the warms and the prepayment assumptions and just options with what, with your data, but just, factoring different assumptions to kind of match up and align with your culture. There is a chat that came in. Brian put it out there just if you didn't notice it, but he commented much like Steve did that the math, all the ACLs are up about 20%. And if we think that's interesting or not, right? Again, I'll just share my thoughts, right? Again, I think that's good that we're moving in that direction. Given the fact that with higher rates, I mean, it just suggests historically that we'll probably have some credit issues. And so again, how pervasive they'll be, who knows? But I think it's certainly prudent for all of us to have seen our reserve levels probably rise a bit this year.
Yeah, and now that sort of, not once in a lifetime, but once, well, depends on how often they want to change this, but once every 20 years, complete reevaluation, right, of the methodology behind reserves and thinking behind how to reserve and what's an appropriate level of reserves to have, because CECL is more cyclical in nature. We should see less spikes and troughs in our reserve levels moving forward. One would think it should be a smoother trend line over time, just despite where we are in the economic cycle, because we have to take into account different parts of the economic cycle in our calculations to begin with. Right. So I think that's part of the idea, and we'll see how that plays out in real life over the next, 5 to 10 years, whether we see a generally slightly higher reserve, but one that's less up and down as we move through the economic cycle. Probably depend on what drives that economic cycle, how much we see that. But that was at least part of the idea in behind it.
Great. Thank you, Steve. Just to follow up here on the prepayment guidance, I think you want to add here, Steve, you kind of touched on a little bit.
Yeah, so this was, the enhanced warm estimator tool that we have is updated every single quarter. So every quarter when you come in there after the end of the next quarter, you'll want to, you don't have to re-download and use the new file. If you have last quarter's warm file with all your loan data in it, and you're not repasting new loan data into a new warm file, you can open up the new one and then just look at some of these assumptions here that have changed, because each quarter the NCUA redoes their guidance. So they've contracted with some outside third-party data provider to redo or refresh their peer analysis of prepayment rates and warms by loan segment, by call report loan segment. And we've seen the prepayment rates come down a little bit, and we've seen the warms go up a little bit for the reasons that we're talking about, right? Borrowers looking for longer terms because of the interest rate environment, warms getting longer because prepayment rates have shrunk and gotten to a historically low level because everyone and their brother who could have refinanced their house already did it in the last 3 years, and now interest rates are rising. So we're seeing less prepayment activity a little bit across the board, and that's drawn out, bears out in the NCUA's updated data each quarter. So if you don't want to dig through their websites, try to find the updated stuff, you can just open up our Excel file each quarter, and it'll be a new version. It'll have a date, the new quarter date in the Excel file name, so you'll know it's been updated, and this data will be refreshed. So you can just kind of keep an eye on those industry average. And when I say industry average, this is for a large sample of credit unions under $100 million in assets. So it's not a sample from the entire universe of credit unions. However, I don't know how much different the average prepayment rate on mortgage portfolios for an $80 million credit union is going to be for a $200 million credit union. I don't see any structural differences there that would make this completely inappropriate for anyone that happens to be a little bit over 100 million. Now, if you're $5 billion in assets and you're relying too heavily on a sample of under $100 million credit unions, maybe a different story. But we do think this is a great starting point, or at least something to kind of a double check, a sanity check on your own warm calculations, right? If you're looking at your own data and estimating prepayment rates or estimating warms, and you can compare that to these industry values, and if they're way off, it at least allows you to dig in a little bit and see why, and if that's something you did on purpose or something that you might need to reevaluate in your assumption process. Sean?
Thank you, Steve. All right, moving on. So, so there are some additional tools that we've worked on that we're going to hopefully begin to introduce and offer. So we just thought we'd start to touch on those. I think as we move forward with these and get them actually implemented, and we'll have further webinars discussing some of these tools in greater detail. We just wanted to maybe take some time today to refresh refresh some of the things that are already out there, and then things that will be coming to you or be available to you here in the future. Steve, you want to?
Yeah. So why don't I share my screen here and we'll go through them. Two of the three have already been available to you guys for a while. We just wanted to make sure that you knew about it because we haven't touched on it in a while. And the third one is not available yet, but will be in the future. And it could be very exciting if you like data anywhere close to as much as I do. So when you first log in, before you go to the CECLSolver, these are existing links that you currently have access to, where you can click on your credit union, my credit union. And again, our guinea pig for today is *1 in California there. And you can see your own financial history, right? Whether you want to look at quarters or year-to-dates or go back in time and look at annual values. It's just a kind of a financial overview of your credit union's balance sheet, income statement, profitability, deposit mix, yields and costs, all that stuff. And compared to, and it shows peer median values. And it also shows your percentile rank, and you can change the peer group to be just, the NCUA peer group 3 just in California or just in the western part of the country or nationally. So you have some flexibility there as to who you're comparing yourself to. So that's just one tool. That data that I just showed you is available not just for your credit union, but for any credit union in the country. If I type in Wisconsin, they're a larger credit union than you can guess where. If I search for them and I click on their name, all that financial data that you see on your credit union, you can see their branch list and you can see their financials as well. So this is just a way to kind of get a interactive financial overview of any credit union in the country that you want to.
Hey, Steve,
sure.
Steve, you can go back there for just a second. Just remind them too that you can see that data quarterly and annually. Want to make sure.
So this is the last 6 quarters. And when we say quarterly, that means that the income numbers are going to be discrete quarters, right? Not year to date. But if you want to see year to date, so for example, for the last 6 quarters, their income, those are not cumulative. But if I click on year to date, they'll be cumulative. See, now it's 2.6, 6.2, 9.6. So this is how you'd file it on your call report, right? On a year-to-date cumulative basis. If you want to look at 5 years, obviously we don't have 2023 data yet. That would be amazing if we did. But you can look at, so these are annual values and annual trends for this credit union or any other credit union. And again, you're always one click away from being able to print it off, PDF it, Excel it, PowerPoint. So always easy to get this data in whatever format that you like to get it in. And so that's just a quick financial overview. This is, we call the credit unions at a glance. This is almost kind of, if you can imagine, if you had all the data in the world in an Excel spreadsheet and you kind of wanted to organize it and look at it for different credit unions, you could organize it in this way. So this is just an interactive tool where you can say, hey, I want to look at all the credit unions around my size in my area and just see some financial comparisons, right? Look at, I can sort it by asset size. I can say, let's say I only want Alabama. As soon as I click on that, is updating. So this is just going to be, this is all the credit unions in Alabama. And if I want to look at smaller ones, I can sort it by asset size. And these are smaller credit unions. And you can look at balance sheet, you can look at profitability, yields, costs, asset quality, and see some trends down here as well. So, and of course, it's always exportable. So this is just a quick way to do some filtering and get a feel for what some of the other credit unions in your neck of the woods and how they're performing. And
another thing here, just to add real quick.
Oh, sorry.
I was just gonna say, and you can click on any of those names and go back right to that
Yes.
credit union. So,
Yeah, good point.
That's the other
Good point.
navigational thing is you can click on any one of those.
Yeah, so I mean,
right
if you we get people ask us frequently, well, who is in my peer group? Who is in my NCUA peer group anyway, right? I'm comparing myself to NCUA peer group 3 or NCUA peer group 5 in Alabama. Those are all the credit unions from $100 to $500 million in assets in Alabama. Well, who are they? Well, there's the $100 million mark, and there's the $500 million mark. Those are the credit unions in peer group 5, right, in Alabama. And if I click on Alabama State employees, it's going to take me right to their individual page, so I can see their financials. So just a way to quickly kind of navigate from some of your peers directly to their page from there. So those are the current tools that you have at your disposal. There's a new tool that we've been working on for a while that we're about ready to share with our credit unions who are interested in getting this type of data, any financial data on any credit unions in the country, but in a much more flexible, I would say almost Excel-like format, but it's not almost Excel, it's actually Excel. So for example, if you guys recognize this data, this is that's that sheet I just showed you guys, right? Where we looked at the ACL trends over the last few quarters for all the NCUA peer group 5 credit unions in the country, of which there are about 1,100. That data came from what we call our Excel add-in tool. So it's a piece of software that you can download, or that you will be able to in the near future download off of our website, that has an add-in directly into QwickAnalytics. So you can use your same login that you would use for the CECL tool and log in directly to the Excel environment, and then you would have access to any piece of financial data that any credit union has ever filed in a few different ways to look at it. This was me just saying, hey, I'll show you how I did it. Let's say I opened up a new sheet and I'm searching for credit unions. I want all the credit unions in Alabama. That's it. Just show them to me. 96 of them. Yeah, I'll use all of them. What the heck? I've now pulled down all 96 credit unions in the state. Now, well, I'm going to look at some asset quality data. So I'm going to open up this, and I can search for a field here like ALLL. And I can just type in ALLL if I want to. I don't want bank data. I want credit union data. So there's my loan loss reserve to loans, and I want it for the second quarter. You can pick it for any period of time you want. I want to add that field, and I'll take it for the first quarter too, and I'll add that field. And I'll just use those 2 fields. So now, zoop, there we go. There's the ALLL to loans for all the credit unions in the state in the second quarter and in the first quarter. So this is a way to just pull down data. You can pull down your peer group. You can pull down any individual credit union you want to. So this is a way to get a handful of data fields, any ones you want for any credit unions. Another way to think about data is if you just want a bunch of data on one credit union, right? If you don't want a couple fields for 100 credit unions, you want a whole balance sheet or a whole bunch of fields for a credit union. You'd say, I'd click on the custom templates and I would choose my credit union. Let's go with those guys in Wisconsin again. Wisconsin. So I found my credit union or whichever one I'm looking for. And now I can find any fields that I want. If I want fee income, loan loss reserve, net income, some, let's see, some loan detail, all other unsecured loans. And I want, there's literally all the fields in the universe are here. And you can search for the fields this way, or you can use our little categories, and we've categorized fields, yields and costs, interest rate for leases, interest rate for new loans, vehicle loans. Let's say I want it for the last 5 quarters and the year 2021. So I can choose all the periods I want and all the fields I want for this one group. And I hit download data and boop, boop, boop. There are the fields that I wanted, and they're all for the same credit union for the periods that for the last 5 quarters and for the year 2021. If I wanted to add, if you want to do kind of a side-by-side analysis where you're comparing your credit union with one other individual credit union as of a point in time, you could pick all the balance sheet fields and compare your complete balance sheet for last quarter with one other credit union's balance sheet from that quarter. So this is you can start to see an unbelievably flexible tool where you can either pull data that you're looking for directly into an Excel environment, or you can build this data into your own models. If you have internal models or templates that you kind of compare against peers, or you have some sort of a liquidity tool model where you want to pull in financial data on a quarterly basis for you or your peer group, you can integrate this data directly into your own Excel files and save it and update it by simply, if I change a quarter, let's say 12/31/20, and I just refresh, and this column just changed. So it's extremely flexible to add a new field. If I wanted to add a new field, I would do that right here. And I could choose the additional field that I want, cash and equivalents. What the heck, why not? Download data. So I just added cash and equivalents to that. And now I'm going to refresh. And there we go. Oh, not cash and equivalents. That's just cash equivalents. So it's extremely flexible, and there's different ways you can look at all the data. Again, this is something that's not been available to our credit union customers in the past, but we're looking at possibly doing that. And Sean, any words or thoughts there?
Yeah, no, I think we've got already a couple people who asked for a demo when it's ready. So I think our best guess is in the next month or two, we should hopefully have it out there. We'll have certainly continued information about it when it is available. We'll certainly make everyone aware of it. We'll have a webinar discussing it, and then again certainly have the opportunity to demo it for you individually. But it is, as Steve said, right, we want to be able to share as much information with you as we can. We want to do it in a way that's hopefully effective and efficient for you. We think the Excel add-in tool is one of those tools that can be really exciting. As Steve mentioned, for someone like him, right, he's building things all the time. But even for someone like me, who's a little bit more of a novice, it's nice to come out here and just pull some information down, on a series of institutions, and then be able to build on them additively each quarter as they go forward through that refresh feature. So I think that's where, like I said, we're excited to get it out there. Hopefully, like I said, it'll be in the next month or two, but we'll continue to update you as we do it. There was a question about the login. Yeah, right now the expectation would be is your same login would be what you would use to log into the add-in tool.
Yeah. but yeah, when we do roll it out, the way it would work with there would be a link on after you logged into the interactive tool, there'd be a link to download the Excel add-in. It's a it's a small piece of software that lives within Excel itself. And once you download that little add-in, it'll ask you to close Excel if you have it open. And then when you reopen Excel, right here, on the top of your Excel, you'll have a tab for QwickAnalytics. And when you click on that, it'll allow you to log in using your same credentials. And then you can search for credit unions, and you can pull data, or you can look for individual credit union data. There's a data dictionary here. There's a great little quick start guide, which kind of just tells you, kind of walks through how you can use the Excel add-in tool to look for data in different formats. And yeah.
All right, fantastic. I'm going to go ahead and take back the screen, I think, Steve.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I think that's kind of what we wanted to cover today. Like I said, more information to come on the add-in tool. Any other questions, go ahead and submit those in the chat or the QA feature. Just a couple of reminders. We've got some, webinars coming up. Thank you, Nancy, for the kind words about the tool. We've got a marketplace webinar coming up on the 29th. So that'll be next week. We've got a loan review if for our IntelliCredit division. For any of you who are looking for a potential loan review, we've got a webinar on September 6th. We will be back in September for Coffee Talk on the 22nd. And then in October, our dear friend Paul Allen from Saltmarsh will be joining us for the October installment of Coffee Talk. So again, please register for all the webinars that you can. Even if you aren't able to make it, you will, by registering, get a copy of the recording and a link to any of the slides. So again, it's just it's worth your while to register, and you'll still have it for your reference, at your convenience within your own schedule. So, Steve, any final words before we let everybody back to their Friday and maybe the weekend here?
No, nothing comes to mind. Just excited for some cooler weather, maybe one of these days. Hopefully.
Yeah, we got a little bit here in Illinois today, so it's been a very welcome morning. We're down about 20 degrees in Kankakee.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks all so much for joining our Coffee Talk again this month. Thanks for participating in the slides. Again, look for the email next week with links to the recording and a copy of the slides. Thank you all for joining us and making these so successful. And we'll hope you have a great weekend, and we'll see you next month. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.